friend Kelley Laughlin. Kelley left Christianity as a teenager and explored a bunch of different religions and ended up believing in a lot of woo. I hear you on that. So he started a field collecting and making jewelry in his early 20s and later started his own business, which he has now been at for 40 years. He went back to college to take a few geology classes so he could answer questions about crystals. And the more he studied the science behind it, the more he became intrigued. Kelley has since co-authored several geology papers, some of them peer-reviewed. He is a regular host of the atheist community of Austin Show, the nonprofits, and volunteers as moderator on the atheist community of Discord, where he also hosts Meet the ACA and the ACA after shows. Welcome, Kelley.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
We are so excited to have you on. Yes. I am super pumped about this. So tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get started doing all of these cool things?
I first got interested in rocks as a little kid. I don't know really what drew me into it. I just thought they were really cool. And one day I walked down the street and I took a rock out of everybody's driveway. And it was all the same kind of rock. It was all just a piece of limestone, but they were all different because they were from each person's driveway. And that was my first rock collection. And I brought that home. I think my mom threw it out 2 days later. Maybe it was 3, but that's basically how I got started collecting rocks. And then it just, from there, it kind of became like an addiction, and it got worse and worse as I grew older until I'm at a point now where I probably have, and I'm not lying, about 3 tons worth of rocks. So
wow. And I see some of them are behind you there.
Yeah, I'm in my office right now. So this is my back wall in my office.
I love that. I'm hoping that we get to do some show and tell later and you'll show us some of your favorite ones.
Sure.
But yeah, well, before we get to that though, can you tell us a little bit about your journey? How did you go from, I'm assuming when you first did your first rock collection, were you religious at that time? Were you living at home with a religious family?
I was young, very young, and my stepfather made sure we all had a good religious background, and I went to a Lutheran church every week, and I went to Sunday school. I went to Bible school during the Christmas or summer breaks at school. So yeah, I really had a really pretty heavily steep Lutheran upbringing.
Interesting. Okay. So it wasn't now was it, I'm not as familiar with Lutheran. My background is more Southern Baptist. And I know in a lot of the schools and churches that we followed, if you were to be interested in something like geology and rocks, that might be problematic if you were finding things that were, say, older than 6,000 years old and suggesting that it was not a young Earth. Did that ever come up for you?
That wasn't a problem with me, because I don't think the Lutherans have a problem with the old Earth idea. At least the people at my church didn't have that problem, and if they did, it was never brought up with me. So I still remember all those Christian hymns, though, "Onward Christian Soldiers," even though, I mean, that was so many years ago, but they lock that stuff in your head. You're so indoctrinated into it. So, but yeah, I never did have the anti-science problem. People have told me that the Lutheran Church has become more that way in the present, but it wasn't something I experienced. And I always say it was sort of like Catholic light. We still had communion, but we didn't have to do the cross, and we didn't have to keep getting up and down and getting on our knees during Mass. So
fair enough. At least it's, a little easier to get through the service, I guess.
Yeah, it's easier on your knees, definitely.
At least there's that.
Yeah.
Well, so what happened? You were happily going to the Catholic light service. It wasn't too hard on you. How'd you end up here?
Well, my stepfather was the one that made sure I went to church, and I had some other problems with him. He was very physically abusive. So he was a really negative part of my life. And he and my mother were divorced when I was about 14 years old. And my mother she was a single mom, 5 kids, trying to just raise us. And getting us to church early Sunday morning was not something that became important to her anymore. So when I stopped going to church, and in all honesty, church was part of the thing that I associated with this really negative thing in my life. So I wasn't real excited to keep going. And the more I didn't go around it, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized that, it just seems like all BS. I had really gotten into Greek and Norse mythology, and I'm a 10-year-old kid going, wow, what happened to these gods? Everybody believed in them. How did that happen? And then I realized, well, this Christian God is the same thing. It's just why do people still believe in that? So I kind of got pushed out of Christianity. By the time I was 15, I was pretty much done with it. So.
Well, interesting. And so was that around the same time that you started developing an interest in some of these other philosophies? Like you mentioned New Age philosophy.
Yeah, I kind of started out looking at Eastern religions, at Buddhism, at Taoism, and put together Zen. And I got really interested in that. And a lot of the woo stuff you find in New Age philosophy, I always say New Age is one word, New Age, so it rhymes with sewage.
I'm going to use that now.
New Age, I love it.
New Age.
But you'll find a lot of New Age ideas come from are pulled from this Eastern mysticism. So it's kind of an easy bridge to go from that into full woo, so.
And I hear this a lot from people that we talk to in RFR and just in general, where they'd say, similar to the poll question that you asked at the beginning, they went from one religious belief and just kind of stepped over into a whole bunch of different ones.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think was behind that for you? What made that attractive to you?
I think that when I was younger, I was looking for something, and I'm not sure what that thing was, but I was looking for some fulfillment in my life. I was going to find the key. It was all going to fall into place. Oh, excuse me. It was all going to fall. I just did it again too. It was all going to fall into place for me. And, I was looking for that enlightenment. Right. And, that's what kept me searching for something. And I don't know that that's really a thing. Enlightenment, I still don't know that that's a thing. So, but I got tired of looking for it, and I'm just happy with who I am and where I am. So
I would say, I was looking for the rainbow connection, and I haven't found it yet. And I don't know if you ever do. I think, but part of it is that I just keep learning as I go along, and that's one of the joys of living.
There's kind of a woo saying among Buddhism, like and the search of enlightenment. When you first start out, mountains are mountains and rivers are rivers, and as you go along, mountains are no longer mountains and rivers are no longer mountains. And when you become fully enlightened, mountains are mountains again and rivers are rivers again. And I kind of feel like that's where I've gotten to, where I've gotten back to the point where reality is it. There's really nothing beyond reality.
And you don't feel like you need to keep searching for something beyond that now?
No, I don't think so. I don't think there is anything more. I honestly don't. I think that if I was searching for a purpose in life, or something that was going to bring me fulfillment, I think I found it by stopping looking for it and being happy with who I am and having fun with my life and trying to make the world a better place when I leave it than I found it in. So
I like that a lot. That is very cool.
I'm gonna there is a question in chat that is related to this. So hold on, let me make sure I ask it correctly. Was there any last thing that led to you, I'm losing it again. that led you to the conclusion that you don't think there is anything more?
Um, I think it was just realizing that I was always looking for something else to make me happy, and it wasn't outside of myself, it was inside myself, right? And I
Mhm.
know that kind of sounds wooey in and of itself, it kind of sounds cliche, but it was true. And a lot of, and one of the things that really helped me do it was I settled down and I had a couple of kids, and my kids helped me, really fulfill my life. Honestly, they made me happier than anything else that ever made me in my life before them. So, and I know that's not true for everybody, but it worked for me. And I had been dealing with PTSD a lot. I had been dealing with a lot of depression. I had been steeped in drugs and alcohol. I was in a really bad place, and all of that changed. Like my whole life changed at a certain, just like that, when my kids were born. So
Wow, that's such a nice story. I don't have
Yeah.
kids myself, but it's really nice to hear that that was your experience and that you were able to.
I
I feel like
it made me get my life together, because I had such a horrible childhood, and I
Mhm.
didn't want, and I wanted to break that cycle. It was really, really, really important to me to break that cycle. So that
Oh,
became my purpose in life, was to break that cycle and make sure that my kids had a really good upbringing.
oh, I love that. Thank you for
Mm,
putting in the effort
mm,
to
yeah.
raise your kids and pay attention to them. That is really, I feel like that's one of those things we shouldn't have to congratulate people for, but as you experienced and a lot of people experience it, it's not always what happens.
Yeah, it's not always easy. It's one of the things that I took advantage of that I don't think most parents do, is they have a really, really short attention span. And you can really use that to your advantage. So, and I see parents that don't use it. It just drives me crazy.
Oh, tell
Yeah.
me more. How do you use this? I need to know these strategies.
If they're throwing a temper tantrum, just show them the shiny thing over here, and all of a sudden they totally forget about the temper tantrum. It was something I used continuously with my kids as they were growing up, and it worked great. So
I would, my kids would start throwing a tantrum and I would walk away, like, especially in a store, I'd be like, I don't know whose kid that is. And
yeah.
I would just keep walking. My kid be like, they would stop and stare at me like, why isn't she reacting?
That's great. Oh, I love someone saying that strategy works with adults too.
Yeah.
It will work with many adults. Yes, it will. Yes, it will. And I'll be honest, I outright lied to my kids about a few things. Like my daughter once saw a picture of me in a military uniform, because I was in the army when I was younger. And
Yeah.
she asked me if I was been in the war, and I was like, yes, I was. And here's the thing, because of all those loud explosions and stuff, it messed up my ears, so I'm kind of deaf to loud noises now. So I don't hear things when it's really loud. And then the next time she was yelling, she came in and started yelling at me, and I went, what? And she calmed down and started talking in a normal voice so I could hear her, so, and that worked for like 3 years until she finally figured it out.
Love that.
That is very clever. I admire your trickery.
Like your
Like I said,
autobiography needs to be titled, 3 years of peace and calm.
Yeah.
it's just being a creative parent. You can solve a lot of your problems just by being creative, really.
That is excellent advice. I'm really glad. I didn't know you were going to talk about parenting, but I'm
I didn't know
glad.
either.
Wait, you mean you're not psychic? Oh wait, that's a different episode.
No, that's me.
Helen, how did you not know
I
Kelley was
don't
going to talk
know.
about this?
My signals got crossed. I sorry,
Can't imagine
I
how.
didn't sacrifice the goat this week, so
You know we have to sacrifice something every week.
I know, I'm sorry. But I'm lazy.
Mentioning the shiny things working on adults, I'm ADD, and I am completely surrounded by shiny things, and there's days I get nothing done. It's just I just go from one shiny thing to another. So yeah, it definitely works on adults too.
So, so getting, let's get, I'm steering the train back on track now.
Okay, sure. Do
So,
it.
so when you started moving out of like fundamentalist religion and started exploring like these alternative spiritualities and stuff like
Mhm.
that, like what did you start studying and what attracted you to them?
One of them, I really got attracted into Taoism first. That was like my first step. And I think what I really liked about it was the openness. I liked the idea that there was no God involved in it, because I was really soured on this idea of a God, because to me it seemed like a made up concept because of the Greek and Norse gods just disappearing, right? So that really attracted me. And there was this idea that there was this underlying force that really wasn't steering everything, but was making everything work out okay anyway. So just go with the flow, man. And it seemed like a great way to run my life, and it really, especially because my life had been so hectic and chaotic and stressful up to that point. It just seemed like such a relaxing way to look at the world in such a different way. So I think that was like my big attraction in the beginning.
But then you moved on from there, right? You tried on a few different philosophies, right?
Yeah, from there I got into Buddhism and looking at, thinking about going to hitting nirvana, and I used to tell my friends all the time, hey, we can't get there unless we all go together, so I was totally steeped in it, but and then I moved on to like the culmination of the two with Zen Buddhism, which is so really cool in many ways, but when you really look at it, it's just a bunch of deepities for the most part. But but I thought it was so cool back then. So yeah.
Yeah. Now, someone's asking in the chat, what made you move on from Taoism? Was it
Oh
just you wanted more, or?
yeah, I don't know. It just wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't doing it for me, right? I wasn't finding my enlightenment yet, so I wanted to move on and learn more stuff. So like I said, it moved me into Buddhism, and then of course you hop across well, you don't have to, because Zen is in China too, so just call it Chen instead of Zen, right? But yeah, and I really found some stability, I guess. I found something in Zen. I really got caught up in it for a long time, but again, like I said, it really is just woo. If you really look at it, it's nothing more than woo itself. And as I said before, a lot of those concepts that are in New Age woo come out of these Eastern ideals, right? So,
Mhm.
and
Yeah, and
that was why it was easier for me to transition into the crystal healing power and Wiccan and paganism. So
yeah,
So,
and just for the chat, for anybody that's not familiar, I mean, we've been using the term woo woo. I think it's kind of a pretty common knowledge word, but how do you define that? What is something that you would classify as a wooey kind of belief?
um the idea that, well, that Taoist idea of this underlying energy that's running everything, I think that's pretty wooey. What's really prevalent in the world, that when this world today, is this pseudo quantum physics, right? And if that's really wooey, the idea that there's some kind of energy that we can't measure but still affects our bodies and our minds, that to me is really wooey. um
Have these just unsubstantiated claims about energies and
right,
forces and powers kind
right.
of
And we've had
vaguely
claims like
described.
that going on forever, right? I mean, we back thousands of years. So, but
Mhm.
it's just still keeps going, and we've just modernized it with different names, and now we make machines to gather up the energy and stuff. It's goofy, but yeah.
yeah, I mean, it started out with animism and then just kind of evolved as people evolved
Hmm.
and things like that, So, but like, you and I both been on that path, moving from one set of silly rules to another set of silly rules.
Right, right,
So,
right.
Well, yeah, and I wanted to mention that y'all both have a commonality there with dipping your toes into the waters of paganism, right?
Yeah, right,
yep.
right.
And I
And
know
and
Helen's talked about that here. Tell us everything,
I
Kelley.
was really attracted because, like I said, I was dealing with this PTSD and this depression thing. So I was really into drugs and liquor. And I'll tell you, pagans do throw better parties. So
They
I
do.
was like right on board, right? Helen will agree with me. I
Oh
was
yeah,
right
best
on
parties. You want
board.
to go to a good party, go to a pagan party.
Yeah, I was right on board with the whole thing. So, and that was a big attraction for me. And at this point, I realized that really, I'm not here to do anything but have fun. So that was all I was doing, was just having fun.
I mean, you know, that's
Unfortunately, you got to still live life. You can't just have fun. And that's all I was doing, was having fun. So, and it was all part of like me running away from my problem that was causing the PTSD that I had to solve later in life. But
mm,
and it might be why I kept bouncing around through all these ideas too, because I was looking for something to help me deal with that as well. So
well, that makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, you know, we try to turn to whatever we can to, you know,
Mm.
self-medicate, or maybe that might not be
mhm.
the right term for these kind of beliefs, but you know, we're looking
No, it
for ways to
is.
solve our problems. And
I
yeah,
think
Well,
it is. It's just
absolutely.
that the medication isn't real medication, right? It's
Yeah.
self pseudo medicating, right? And
Yes.
that's where a lot of your crystal energy comes from, is that pseudoscience. And people who have had problems, a lot of times
mm,
emotional or mental problems, and they're not getting the help they need from the medical community, so they're willing to turn to anything, right? Or
Yeah.
they have some kind of
mm,
condition that's untreatable,
Yes.
I have a rare bladder condition. It's untreatable. I just have to live with it. And
Mhm.
but there are people would have the same kind of thing and think that, oh, just because medicine can't treat it, maybe this crystal can. And I've been told that people believe this stuff for 1,000 years or 5,000 years, so there must be something behind it, right?
Yeah. Well, and you know, I can absolutely understand that. I'm so glad you brought that up because, you know, we we tend to rely on, okay, well, let's go to the doctor, let's get, you know, whatever Western, you know, scientific medical solutions to our problems, but we don't necessarily have a way to cure or treat every illness that exists. And if you happen to have something that isn't helped by the medicine that's available, you know, what is one to do? I can see how it would be very easy to be desperately searching for something and want to hope, well, maybe this will fix it because what else is there?
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
and a lot with the pagan community and those other like new agey kind of communities is there's this idea that you can everything is just energy, and if you clear the energy and make it flow better, somehow your ailment will get better,
Mhm.
and it's very placebo.
Mm-hmm.
And I do agree that like meditate certain forms of meditation and relaxation does help, because a stressed out mind is not good when you're trying to heal. But my big but is that is still not going to, like, if you have cancer or a rare bladder problem like Kelley has, or ADHD like I have, or nerve issues like I have, no amount of calmness is going to cure those things. But in those
Right.
woo-woo communities and the pagan communities and stuff, things that you can do a spell or whatever, and
Mhm.
eventually you will heal, or it will be easier or whatever, and it's just a bunch of BS.
One
I'm
more
just
step.
saying.
Yeah. Well, and it's like we've talked about before with, you know, the psychic mediums from a few weeks ago. It's,
Yeah.
you know, if you know your audience is desperate for an answer, it's real easy to sell them garbage because
Mm-hmm.
they want to believe you. Yeah.
Right.
And is
And
that, yeah, go ahead.
go ahead. No, go ahead. You
Oh, I was just going to ask if that was kind of to do with how you got into the crystals and everything. Is that a healing energy kind of belief
it well,
system?
they claim it is, yes.
Yeah.
And it my who well, the woman that was to become my future ex-wife, she really believed in the healing powers of the crystals, so she kind of dragged me into it. And we're talking like early 1980s at this point, and honestly the whole crystal healing movement was just getting its legs at that point. And as I recall, there was like 3 books you could go out and buy to tell you about the crystal energy. And you could look up the same mineral in all 3 books, and they would have 3 different things that they were going to heal for you, right? They hadn't like standardized it yet. And a few years later in the 90s, the Crystal Bible came out and everybody started copying off of that. So it kind of like became, all these cures became standardized after that. But before that, it depended on what book or what each rock was going to cure. So it was kind of, that kind of got me wondering in and of itself to begin with. Right.
Mhm.
And that kind of set me on the path of maybe what I'm believing here isn't real. So
Yeah. So were there like several other steps that you went through that kind of brought that to your attention as you went along, more
yeah,
inconsistencies or
yeah.
instances?
That's what really got me started wondering about it. I'm also starting to learn about the science behind the rocks. And as I'm learning the science behind the rocks, I'm realizing that a lot of this stuff that they're claiming just can't be true. It just can't be, right? Like a rock being able to suck up EMF waves. I mean, that can't be true, can it? No, it
And
can't.
what are EMF waves?
Electromagnetic frequencies or something. I'm not sure, but supposedly your computer gives them off and it's really bad for you. So if you get a piece of shungite, which is really just coal, it's very, very, very pure coal. So if you get a piece of shungite and you put it between your computer and you, when you're on the computer, it'll suck up all these EMF waves. And so you don't have to worry about them getting into your body and doing something. I don't know what they're even going to do to you.
But how
Electromagnetic fields.
convenient
There
that,
you go. Thank you.
yeah, convenient
So
that setting a rock out will solve the invisible problem that you didn't know you had.
Yeah, right, exactly. And we're going to charge you $20 for a rock that's worth $3. So
Yeah.
so
What a steal.
where do
yeah,
you think, like from what you've studied and being part of the that community in the past, where do you think those ideas came from, that stones could heal like an upset stomach or something?
it came from pareidolia. When people
Mm,
saw a rock that looked like a part of the body, they got the idea that that rock would be good for that part of the body, right?
mhm,
They did
mhm.
the same things with plants. If they saw a leaf that looked like a heart, then obviously it was good for your heart. Hematite, if you rubbed it on something and got the dust off of it, it turned red. Just like if you broke a human skin, it would turn red. So it's obviously good for your blood, right? It's also
Oh,
kind of like rounded like a kidney is. So it's got to be good for your kidney too, because it looks like a kidney. So these ideas did start back then. Not all rocks were thought to heal something, just a few of them were. One of them that was not known to heal people back then, 3,000 years ago, were quartz crystals. Nobody ever believed that until like the 1970s. So,
Oh,
and
interesting.
I
that's
tried to
interesting.
explain it. If you actually go back and look at old literature or something, there's no belief in that quartz crystals heal anything at
Huh.
all until like the 1970s. So
Did that come along with like the guru and the whole after the
it,
hippie movement and
yeah,
that
yeah,
new spiritualism kind of
Gerald
thing?
Gardner kind of started the whole thing, and
Damn
then it just,
Gardner.
yeah, and it kind of expanded off of him. I know he was just trying to see women naked.
That's
I
what I always
think. But
say. Like,
yep, yeah,
he
yep,
wanted
yep.
to, he started a religion to see naked ladies running around a fire.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I say the same thing. So
Yep.
So while you were involved with the crystals and the rocks and everything, were you ever convinced that they had some sort of a health benefit for you or another
oh
person?
yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, we had little trays out with little signs telling you what they would heal. So I was convinced, and my future ex-wife was totally convinced as well. I mean, she was the one that really helped convince me. And yeah, I really did. So, we were talking about other things I did. My friends got a problem with this. Well, here, take this rock. And when they come back in it, because we were living on the road, we were living
Mhm.
in an RV. We spent like 5 years, her and I, doing that. Here, take this. And keep it with you. And when I come back in 3 months, we'll see if it helps you. And no, it didn't. It didn't do anything, Yeah, I've been walking around with this thing in my pocket. And no, I don't feel any better. And then so I'm trying, and I realize that's not a real scientific experiment, right?
Mhm.
But it's showing me that it's not working. It's
Right.
right.
There was
So
no evidence to support the claim that you were
right.
able to discern.
Right. So I'm starting to disbelieve it more and more and more. And then I had a really lucrative deal going on after a while. I was in Chicagoland. I got caught up with a circuit of psychics. And every weekend they would do a psychic fair somewhere around Chicagoland. And they would rent a banquet hall. They'd all set up at their tables. There'd be anywhere from 6 to 12 of them that weekend. And they would let me set up a table over in the corner with all my crystals and all my jewelry. This is back in the 80s, mid 80s, mid late 80s. And it was very lucrative for me because I would go out and work 2 days, Saturday and Sunday, and I would make $750, which was pretty good money back then, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty lucrative. But I'm doing these experiments. I'm thinking that maybe what I'm doing is bad. I'm starting to feel guilty about telling people that rocks are going to heal them when I'm not sure that they are. So I'm starting to not sleep at night. And then one of the psychics came up to me one morning and he said, "Hey, is there something that you have a whole bunch of or that you're trying to get rid of? Because I can tell people that's what they need today, so you can move it for you." And that was
Oh.
it. That was the last psychic fair I ever did. And that was the straw that broke the camel's back for me.
Oh, wow.
And at that, I never again did I ever tell anybody from that point on that a rock was going to help them.
Wow. And so this was one of the people who was selling other products there at the psychic fair.
No, he wasn't selling products. He was selling tarot card readings. He was selling psychic readings. So I don't know if that's a product or is that a service or is
Maybe
that
A
that's
service.
or is it
Sure,
just
if you-
shoveling bullshit? So
Yeah,
Both.
probably
It's
that
both.
last one. Yeah.
Listen, I will give you a tarot card reading. Granted, results may vary, but I can give you one.
I can too.
I am a fearless psychic after all.
I can too. I was told that I was actually a really good tarot card reader, but
You just understand human psychology very well.
I
And that's
think-
all it is.
I think that's what it is. I think you just pick up a lot of cues because I found that if I got the person talking, the more they talked, the better my reading was. And they didn't even have to talk about the subject of the reading. It was just talking. And you just pick up on subconscious cues about people's personalities or the frame of mind that they're in, So, and I think that's what it was a lot. You're reading body language, you're reading the way they're speaking, the patterns of their speech, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, and this comes with, like, I'm sure with the crystal healing too. It's like your brain's already primed that this is going to work. Like I'm going in for a tarot card reading. The tarot's, the woman's psychic, the tarot helps, so obviously, they know something. Somebody goes in and they say amethyst opens like your third eye or whatever mumbo jumbo, and and they hold the rock and they feel like there's a power flowing through it. It's just priming the brain. The brain is like, I expect this. The brain already expects it because it's just you just conditioned it to feel a certain way.
Power of suggestion.
Yeah, power
right?
of suggestion. Yeah.
Right. Amethyst is actually one of those stones that does have a long history of doing something magical. It was supposed, if you kept it underneath your tongue, it would keep you from getting drunk. And now I tested that. It definitely does not work.
But
Listen,
I mean,
if I'm
you
going to
probably-
drink, it kind of defeats the purpose.
True. But you might want to repeat that experiment several more times,
I did.
just to
I
make
did it.
sure.
I did.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Well,
I did.
For
I
science.
Amethyst-
only stopped because I finally swallowed the amethyst.
Oh no.
Kelley, did you hear that amethyst helps increase Reiki power? Have you heard that in your shop?
Well,
Or energy
it
healing?
probably does increase it by two or three times, but if you times 0 by 2 or 3 times, you still get 0. So
Right.
Still not
Right.
helping. That's great. Now, I liked something you mentioned when we were talking before, Kelley, about how one of the ways you were thinking about some of these like woo-y kind of beliefs were that you were keeping an open mind, and that, why shouldn't you investigate these things if you have an open mind? But then you kind of came to realize that's not really having an open mind, right?
Right. Yeah. And it's really prevalent in the New Age community. That it's prevalent in a lot of things. Like one my ex-wife was a ghost hunter for a while, and she told me that they all had an open mind. They were were open to the fact that they were going to prove ghosts were real. Right. And that's what I was doing. I have an open mind because I believe these alternative things. Right. And then one day I realized that's not what an open mind is. Having an open mind is taking everything you believe and putting it back through the ringer to see if it really is logically viable and something you should be believing in. Right. And that's what I started to do. I started to actually open up my mind and question the things that I believed in. And that's when I really started to get myself out of woo. And for me, it was a lot harder for me to get out of that because than Christianity, because I was steeped in it for twice as long as I had been steeped in Christianity. I had been doing this for 20 years when I was just like 5 to 15 as a Christian. Right. So it was really difficult for me. And it's something that we don't often think about as atheists, agnostics, atheists, that there are a lot of people who are steeped in this thing. And it's one of the fastest growing spiritual movements in the country today. And it could be just as harmful, if not more, than Christianity or other religions, because it does deal with like this crystal woo, where you can get hurt on a physical level because you have given up going to a doctor and getting real medical help because you're using a crystal to get better instead. So it's something that more people need to be aware of. It's something that I think our community should rise up and work against more than we do. It's because I think it's not only as big of a problem as other religions in the sense of what it does, but it's also, like I said, the fastest growing movement in the United States today. So it's becoming a bigger and bigger and bigger problem as time goes on.
And I think
didn't realize that.
it's a real problem. That's why, like, me, Cara, like, this is the thing I'm always speaking out against. Rob is always speaking out against, because we see this going on and it's deeply bothersome, because people will ignore, they ruin their finances, they can ruin their health. There's a whole bunch of things that happen on that path. But like, I'm sure you'll agree with this, Kelley, like, just because you leave religion doesn't mean you leave the magical thinking behind. That's the harder part.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And
Just when you just start disbelieving in God, it doesn't make you a logical thinker, unfortunately.
yeah, that's a really good point. I like that. Do you have any kind of tips for people to kind of figure out if they're having an open mind, heavy air quotes, or if they are critically thinking? Like, how do we know if we're believing something just because we want to? And how can we figure out whether that's the case?
I wish I was more prepared for that question, honestly. A
Sorry.
really good, if you want to look it up, it's something that's really good, is Carl Sagan's baloney detection kit.
Oh, yes.
And if you just type that into Google, you will get it. And it's a list of things it's a list of 5 or 6 things to keep in mind when you look at a new premise, to see if that premise is logically sound, or if it's true, something that you should believe in. So that's why I said I wish I was more prepared, because I just pop that up and go, well, here's 6 steps you can use. But one of them is falsibility, right? If it's unfalsifiable, then maybe it's not something you should be believing in, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So you would go through it systematically. It's not a gut feeling kind of thing. You would systematically evaluate
it. As you get more involved in it and you get more experience, you do get gut feelings, right? One of the things that I found in the mineral world, if a new mineral comes on the market and it has like the name of a goddess or a type of an angel or a wizard's name from fiction, it's almost always some bullshit. Right.
Yeah.
So just as soon as I see the name, I'm pretty much sure. And often it's something that's already been around a lot, and somebody just gave it a new cool name so they can sell it easier for more money, right? Merlinite is a good example.
I've seen people make inferences on like star constellations because it was named after, like, a god or something in
Mhm.
fiction and stuff like that. And they start saying that, oh no, that's real, or it's so weird. It's very strange with the way people, their mental gymnastics are entertaining, at least.
And so,
Angel, I see in the chat,
Yeah.
angelite is a good example of one. Celestite is actually an old name. It was Celestite comes in two colors, orange and blue, the colors of the sky, and that's how Celestite got its name. So it sounds like it's one of those new agey wooey names, but it's actually an old one.
oh, interesting. But it's just got recycled.
Yeah, it's very pop. There is blue celestite that comes from Madagascar, and it's very popular in the woo crystal world. So
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like there are some triggers, some keywords that you would look for if it's,
yeah, and like I said, once you've been involved in it all for a while, you do, like, some things will just throw a red flag up. If I see something that's named after the seraphim, Seraphonite. Okay, well, what is that? I got to go look that up because I know that's a bullshit name right off the bat, right?
Mhm.
So that's, yeah, you get used to that kind of thing, especially when you never seen the name before. That people in the New Age crystal community just are constantly making up new names for things.
Oh, wow. And do they attempt to present these as something that they didn't just make up, or are they just like, oh, look, this was just discovered. It's the, whatever,
It's usually something.
starlight.
It was just this. Oh, look at this new discovery.
Oh,
This new
boy.
great discovery of Merlinite, and it's oh, and it'll help you do all this cool stuff. It'll help you actualize yourself, and you'll get grounded, and it'll cure your earaches.
Oh, boy.
So yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and so now you've mentioned in your studies of, actual studies of geology and rocks and things,
Mhm.
you've written some articles and done some actual, reputable research. How could people kind of tell the difference between, someone's made up BS about a new stone they invented versus actual, reliable, credible information? What
You
what
can't.
can people do?
You can't. That's the problem. Um, there's so much stuff out there on the internet that it's almost impossible. And I've even encountered people where, they've come up, and I used to do a lot of trade shows, and someone would come up and say, oh, wow, this crystal has so much power, and they'll look at me and hold it and go, these things can heal you, right? And I would say, no, they don't. Oh, yes, they do. And it's like, no, there's never been any studies done that says that they can do that. And they'll say something like, yeah, all you got to do is go on the internet and you can learn all about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the problem, is that there's so much misinformation out there, and that people just believe it, mostly, I think, because they want to believe it. I mean, that's why I did it. That's why I believed it. It was something that I wanted to believe. So it was easy. I think I mentioned this in my notes. I was indoctrinated into Christianity as a child. I indoctrinated myself into this, right?
Oh.
Because I wanted to believe it. And I got way more involved in this in my mind. I was more convinced of this than I was of the religion, right? And it was harder for me to come out of it.
Well, that's really interesting. I know a lot of times when people have come out of religion, they've mentioned that, it was extremely difficult and it was almost like a devastating loss of something that they, then went through some grief to have lost. Did you feel like that happened for you with leaving behind the New Age and the crystals and everything as well?
Not really. Mostly I was angry at myself, because
Mm,
because I came to that realization that I had fooled myself into believing this. And it was like,
okay.
how could I have been so dumb to fall for this? Right. And
Mm,
I really I was angry with myself for the most part. But we fall for stuff. We are convinced of things. And so and on top of it, I had to come home and live with myself every evening. So I reconciled with myself and moved on, right?
mhm.
So, but that's
Well,
all you can do, really.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that kind of goes back to what you were talking about earlier too. Oh my goodness, Helen's kitty is on camera and I am massively distracted.
Sorry, I had to. I was like, let's
Oh,
go see the people.
that is the
Okay.
most
All
adorable
right, go
cat.
back. Sorry, I'm
Okay.
distraction
No,
over.
you're
Go back
fine.
to the
Okay. Yes.
interview.
Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. So where were we? Yeah, with critical thinking, like you were mentioning earlier, you're actually trying to evaluate what you're believing to make sure you're believing it for good reasons, not just because you want to. And that sounds to me like that comes with, you have to have at least some amount of humility to be willing to recognize, oh, I might be wrong about this. I'm going to have to change my belief and go back and tell people that thing I thought last week, it turns out that's not it. I mean,
Mhm.
is that something that you
It,
also kind of have to cultivate and
yeah. Oh,
mentally
yeah.
prepare yourself for?
Yeah. And I mean, it takes a big person to realize that you were wrong and accept it, right? It really does. Not everybody is able to do that.
Mhm.
And I think that's one of my better qualities, is that I was able to do that. So
Yeah, I think
is
so
I
too.
was able to, yeah,
Yeah, it's
sorry, I
not.
kind of got lost there for a second, but yeah, it really did help me to move on. So
Yeah, well, that's wonderful. I'm so glad you were able to do that. I feel like a lot of times, people who are, skeptical of these kinds of things, are accused of being, oh, you're just condescending. Oh, you just think you're a know-it-all. But,
mhm.
actually, to be able to look at your own beliefs and try to figure out, okay, let me get excited if I can, find something that I believe that's wrong, because then I'll be able to get rid of a wrong belief and believe more things that are right.
Right.
I mean, that requires you to be, just as critical of yourself as you are of anybody else. It's not necessarily being
I
condescending, right?
I found when I came to these realizations at first and I would talk to people, I would often be confrontational, like we sometimes are when we first cross over that line, and like just put evidence of of what these people were believing right in their face, showing them that this is
Hmm.
not real. There's been a few studies that I've shown them, this is all what you believe in is not real. And their whole idea is, well, you just don't understand it, you just don't get it, you've just never experienced any of this. And it's like, when you try to tell them, yeah, I lived this for 20 years, they just refuse to believe it. It's just like you weren't a true Christian kind of thing, you weren't a true New Ager then if you didn't get it.
Oh man,
It's
that's the
really
no true
weird.
Scotsman.
It really is. It's really weird. And it really is just like recovering from any other religion. And that's why I try to talk about it more, because like you said, you didn't realize, right?
Hmm.
It is so prevalent out there today, and so many people don't see it. And we really need to be talking about it more. So
And it folds over into like the alternative medicine part of it too, which is
yes,
like,
yes.
you start, you and I have talked about this, Kelly, about people thinking that marijuana will cure anything, or your kid has ADD, let's get them some CBD oil. And I'm like, yo, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
Like, your kid has a chemical imbalance. CBD is probably
Yeah.
not going to do it for him, because they hear medicine and they and big pharma and stuff like that. But it's like, also, I'm like, do you think charlatans, the people that are peddling bullshit, don't want to make money?
Yeah,
Well,
right.
Right.
Yeah, I know. I always say that to people too.
Mm.
Oh, you're worried about big pharma making money, and yet you're going to big herbal, right? You're going to buying
Right.
these herbal supplements, and they're making billions of dollars a year too. They don't understand that. Yeah, it's even the same people in a lot of instances that are selling the herbal supplements, right?
Yeah, and it's that same kind of, flawed logic that, it might sound good on its surface to be able to say, well, the big pharmaceutical companies are problematic in these 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 ways. Therefore, this other completely untested, unknown alternative must be good. Well, we haven't established that.
Yeah.
You've established that one thing is problematic. You haven't established that your alternative is not also problematic. But
I got this condition, and big pharma hasn't given me a pill yet that can fix it, so they can't be any good. there's that kind of an attitude too. And
Yeah.
that's where I think a lot of our animosity towards big pharma comes from, is that they're not helping me. I've cycled through 6 pills and none of them work. So I've had that problem myself. I have weird reactions to medications. I'm like the 1 in 20 million people. So I have high blood pressure and I can't do anything about it because all the medications either do nothing or they raise my blood pressure. Right. So it's kind of weird. Now I'm not mad at big pharma about it. Right. Because I understand it's my personal physiology. Right. It's not their fault. So
it gets scary because like I was listening to a podcast where parents were giving their children enemas to cure autism.
Oh, wow.
And it got really severe where they stripped the line. Some kids they were stripping the lining of their bowels and it was coming out and it looked like worms. And they thought that was like something in their system that was being
the bad toxins coming
bad toxins and stuff like that. And a lot of kids got sick, a couple died because guess what, people? Enemas don't cure autism. And I don't think it's something that needs to be cured. But all these weird, you get these ideas, especially with mental illness and people that are neurodivergent, that there's something wrong with you or wrong with your child. And if it's not perfect, if it's not the way that you want it, and it's the same thing where you're saying with Kelley, with big pharma, or having to do the work, to take care of your kid because your kid may be neurodivergent and needs some help. Instead of doing the work, you're like, oh, I'm going to give them enemas and hope that the autism goes away. But that's the dangerous side of alternative medicine and these woo-woo communities, because if you can believe in like crystals cure like stomach ailments, it's not too far of a turn where you're doing what I just described, and it's very scary.
I saw something scary once on Facebook years ago, some 12 years ago, that made me actively go out in public and start campaigning against this. And it was a woman had posted in a Facebook group, what crystal would be good for my daughter's diabetes?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I seeing that, I was just appalled, as anybody would be, and that's when I decided I have to start saying something. I have to go out there in public and start fighting against this, because nobody else is doing it. Nobody else is standing up to this. And it's been really heartening to see that a lot of people in this business, in the mineral specimen business, are now standing up and kicking back against this, because it's not only is dangerous in the ways we've discussed, that one is a religion, being indoctrinated into a religious idea, to the possible physical problems because of the alternative medicine thing. But it's also hurting the mineral specimen business. And you wouldn't think, because sales go skyrocketing, right? But they only buy certain things. They only hardly ever spend more than $20. And I sell specimens. I have specimens in my store up to $5,000, and they wouldn't even, they might look at it, but they would never ever buy anything like that, So if you start catering to that business, the people who would buy $5,000 specimens from you, they won't buy them anymore, right? They just don't trust you anymore. You're now part of that group. So you've really got to stay away from it. And what has happened is that a lot of the people who own rock shops have steered away from selling fine mineral specimens, because it's easier to sell a bunch of $10 rocks. So you'll go into a rock shop in Chicago, you'll go into one in Minot, Nebraska, you'll go into one in LA, and all three of them look exactly the same with the exact same rocks in it, right? And that's really been hurting our business as a whole. That's one of the things. There's other reasons, but that's one of the major reasons.
Yeah. Okay. So completely, ignorant question on my part. What kinds of things would you normally be selling rocks for? Not the new age, energy crystal business, but like who are the customers that you would be normally selling
The
to?
same kind of they're collectors, the same kind of people
Hmm.
that might collect stamps or coins or butterflies, right? It's just another type of collector collecting something that's aesthetic and pretty. So
Yeah.
a lot of people are just interested in it. A lot of people really start getting into the geology of it, the science behind it. And it's a really cool field of science because, like I've said, I don't have a degree in geology. People consider me a geologist. There was a guy who was the curator of the Mineral Connect collection at the Smithsonian. His name was Paul DeSottles, never had a degree. Um, One of the world's foremost gemologists, Johnson Kankas, never had a degree.
Oh,
So
wow.
people, you can be recognized in this science because of your knowledge, not because of your degree. And I think that's really cool in this science because it happens all the time with people.
That is really cool. And we have an excellent question from the chat that I was just wondering about myself. Some of us are wondering, would you show us a couple of your favorite rocks and tell us a little bit about them?
Yeah, this is just a bunch of rocks. It's not my personal collection, although there are a few of my collection here. I A few years ago, my collection was kind of squeezing me out of the house, so I decided I had to do something and narrow it down. And a lot of my collection ended up in the store. Most of it's gone now, honestly. But there is a rare formation that crystals sometimes take, and it's called the scepter formation.
Mhm.
And I started collecting scepter crystals only for a couple of reasons. Number one, they're rare, so it was hard to get them. And number two, they tend to be smaller. So the collection got to be smaller. Um, so I have a really nice cluster of some right here.
Oh, cool.
Oh, oh, those are
And
really pretty.
Yeah.
yeah, isn't that cool? The shape they make with the larger tip. And yes, I have heard all the penis jokes.
Just about the tip,
I
right?
was behaving, so I get a gold star.
Couldn't resist.
I don't know how good this one will show up, but there's a one with an amethyst tip,
Oh, yeah.
where I made the same little cool tip, cool funny tip.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, science question, what produces that kind of shape? If you can tell us
It's
that.
two different growth stages.
Oh,
See, now you see why I've heard all the penis jokes. But
Mhm.
yeah, just a little.
Listen, you can't help that nature's gonna make penises out of stones.
yeah, I
It's
know.
not
You
your
know what?
fault.
And it's not, honestly, the first 5 or 6 I ever saw looked more like mushrooms. And I thought, wow, that's really cool, little rock mushrooms. And then as I started collecting them and I started realizing, these don't all look like mushrooms at all. And then my friend started making jokes and I just kept going with it. So
And they just got used to it, right?
but my original idea was that I was going to get a smaller collection by doing this, and now I have almost 500 of them. So
I
So
love that.
what is the most okay, I'm gonna like pick a stone, and what is a odd fact about that stone that people wouldn't normally know about? Like
kyanite,
okay.
kyanite, and it's really popular in the metaphysical community because you can get a crystal for $1 or $2, right? Maybe
Mm.
$3. And there's a thing called the Mohs hardness scale. It goes from 1 to 10, and all minerals are on that scale somewhere between 1 and 10 in hardness. But kyanite, depending on which plane, because it's got 3 planes, right? Depending on which plane you test, it has 3 different hardnesses. It's the only mineral that does that. So that's a cool fact.
That's cool.
That is
Yeah.
really cool. Okay.
I
I
Some
love learning
minerals
new
will
stuff.
glow in a black. Some minerals glow in a black light.
Oh, that's cool. What causes that?
Um, it's them throwing off an ion from the light energy.
That's really interesting. I never took geology in school and I'm feeling like I missed out now.
Yeah, you should have.
No. There's still
It's like-
time to go back and learn, right?
Yeah, that well, see, I was in my 30s when I went back and took geology classes. I got a degree in English. I studied English so I would have something to fall back on in case I couldn't make it as a short order cook.
It's always good to have a backup plan.
So somebody is 'cause since we're on this topic, somebody was asking, could you tell us about any minerals that may have real medicinal value to medical science versus like anything that's woo-woo?
Sure.
Yeah.
Uranium, right? We do use radiation treatment for cancer, right? Lithium, which is really an element, not a mineral, but it does occur in nature, and it's used with people who are bipolar, right? I don't know if they still do. Do they still use
Yeah,
lithium?
one of my good friends is bipolar and they're on lithium.
Yeah. One of my friends was a long time ago, but I haven't had a bipolar friend in a long time. So that's another example. All the not the vitamins, but the minerals that you need, all of those are minerals. They're all rocks. It's right. So you need all of that stuff to make your body function healthily. So there are a lot of minerals that are very useful for health. It's just that they don't have some there are quick answer. There are over 300 minerals that glow in a black light, so I can't really answer that one for you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, right. It's a tough one to answer. Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
that is a lot. Like, I think I've seen those in like, psychedelic movies and stuff like that, of like
Right.
rocks glowing in like a stoner's bedroom or something.
You may be thinking of Uber lights, though. They kind of became a fad a couple of years ago. They were all over the internet. That was my 15 minutes of my first 15 minutes of fame, was that I was the one who analyzed the rocks to find out what minerals were in it and what was causing them to glow in the black light. And I was in a documentary. I was on like 5 news shows. I got to be on TV in Japan. It was really cool.
That is
Oh, wow.
cool. Yeah, I've seen a couple of your appearances, Kelley, since you shared them with me.
Yeah.
It's very cool.
I want to see the one in Japan. I need this in my life.
I wish I had a link to that one. And it was on YouTube for a long time and it disappeared. And my voice was dubbed, so I was speaking in Japanese. And I had this
my goodness,
like sumo wrestler sounding voice. And while me and my kids were watching it, all we could do was laugh from the beginning to the end every time that I spoke. It was pretty funny.
I love that. I need you to find that. If you find it and send me the link,
I would
Yeah,
love to find a copy of that. I really would.
I'm gonna search for it now in Japanese, and I'll tell you if I find it.
Cool.
And I feel like we're in the Q&A session now, so I'm just gonna keep going with questions if that's cool with you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so somebody else was asking earlier about essential oils, and are those pseudoscience, like the crystals and everything?
Well, see the best thing is like we were just talking about how some minerals actually do have healing properties, right?
Mhm.
And that the best con is one that's partially true, right? So are there some essential oils that have scents that make you relax? Yes, they've actually proven that. I think lilac is one that does that. I think jasmine is another one. So there are some scents that will help you relax. Now, are any of those things going to help cure anything? No. Lavender, there you go. Thank you very much. Lavender. Are any of those things going to cure anything? No. Is relaxing going to help you? Yes. So I don't know how to answer that. Are they helpful? Kinda, but they don't cure anything.
Like tea tree oil helps with like scalp issues and skin issues and stuff like that. It's used as medicinal,
Because
it's put into skincare and hair care, but those are things that they've tested in science to show that it's beneficial.
Yeah, and making your hair softer is not the same thing as curing your diabetes, for example.
Right.
A different level of claim.
I see somebody mentioned CBD oils too, and I'm gonna I don't know if I should say this, but it's pretty well known where I live at. I was very instrumental in helping medical marijuana get legal in the state of Michigan.
Oh,
So I was very up on the medical effects of it. Because I had to answer questions all the time when I was going to meetings, and I personally think CBD oils is probably the biggest fraud being perpetuated in the pseudo medical world today. So I don't think CBD does anything for people except empty their pockets of money.
hmm, interesting. Good to know.
So
Okay.
that's just my opinion. There has not been any research done yet that has proven that they actually have any benefit. There has been a lot of research that shows that they might have some benefit, but there hasn't been anything conclusive yet. And I noticed you mentioned that celebrities are touting them. No, they're not. People are stealing the images and the names of celebrities and touting them. It's been a big problem. Cheech and Chong in particular have been shown in a lot of these things, and they're trying to find these people because they are not endorsing these products. People are using their name and their images.
Wow. That's good to know. Well, and that's a really good distinction that you're making there between saying there have been some studies that show that they could potentially have some benefit, and that is not the same thing as these are medically proven cures for whatever ails you.
Right. And I've seen a lot of people don't understand the difference. It's really weird because I've had people like just argue with me that it cures cancer. Well, there's never been a study that says it cures cancer. Does it alleviate some of the symptoms? Yes. Right. Nausea, for instance, if you're going through chemo, right? One of the reasons I help champion it is that I have pancreatitis and I have really bad nausea, and it does help me with my nausea. So that's why I wanted to make it legal, because I really did help me. So I forgot, I got lost where I was at.
No, but like, I'll wait for you to catch up. But like, I have chronic nerve pain. I'm on medical marijuana. It doesn't cure the nerve pain. All it does is brings my anxiety and stress levels down. So it makes the pain bearable. So if I'm stressed out and I have high anxiety because of pain, my pain can go up to a 9. Smoke a little weed,
Mhm.
and it goes down to a 4. I'm still in pain, but it's bearable. I can go about my day, I can sleep at night, and it,
Right.
because the marijuana is not curing the pain, it's just making it tolerable so I can function.
Yeah, I always say it doesn't get rid of the pain. It just makes it so I don't care about it as much anymore.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I'm like, okay, I'm fine. Okay, I'm like,
Right,
I'm
right.
like, all right, now I want to like eat chips and listen Pink Floyd,
Right, right.
Yeah. So
But
some of these, it sounds like it's a matter of degrees. The claims that are being made are wildly exaggerating what it would be reasonable to
right,
expect.
right. And
Yeah.
that's what makes a good lie, right? Is that part of it is true, so that you can build off the true part. That's where going back to the woo thing, one of the things that helped me really immerse myself there was a couple of books from the late 80s, early 90s, the Dancing Wu Li Masters and the Tao of Physics, and they both took quantum physics and tied them into Eastern mystical ideals. And it's like, hey, check it out. These Taoists had it right when they said this, because now in quantum physics, we're finding the same. And it was like, just like Muslims compare the Quran to some things that we know today astronomically. See, look at it, predicted that this was going to happen, right? And it's just trying to find something that fits, basically. But yeah, again, I got lost. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. No, I think that was basically
Oh
what
yeah,
you
the
were going.
Dancing Wu Li Masters,
Yeah.
because there was this. They had real quantum physics in it, so you were reading real science, right? And they were kind of tying it into this wooey thing. That's where even the crystal healing comes from. This wooey quantum energy that came out. A lot of the concepts came out of those two books, and that's one of the ways I got caught into it was, wow, look at it's science.
Yeah. Well, and
I
isn't
do the
that one
same
of the
thing.
main ways, yeah, that they get you with the pseudoscience is they do link you to a real study or they have some real facts, but then they're just playing a little fast and loose with them. And all of a sudden we're over here making a conclusion that is not warranted by those facts or that study, but they wave their hands a little bit and make you miss that key step, right?
Like
Mhm.
I remember reading a book a few years ago before I was still in when I was still in my magical thinking phase. It was like quantum physics in the Akashic field. It was like Deepak Chopra, an actual physicist, wrote this book, and it was just making inferences that, like, the Akashic field was related to the quantum and all this woo woo stuff, and like that's what, and it's also popular in the pagan community, this whole thing about quantum physics, and that's
Yeah,
how
yeah,
magic
yeah.
works. It's wild, and
Right, right.
and you get drawn in because it's like, oh, it's science based, like the scientists are studying this stuff, and it's really just making inferences and, like, doing God of the gap shit.
It was so easy for me to go, here I am, I'm reading this really cool spiritual Eastern stuff. And then it gets compared to quantum science. And they draw these correlations. So now I'm thinking it's science. And then I find a whole nother group of people who are kind of like believing in this whole quantum energy that's running everything, and they throw great parties. It was really hard for me not to get sucked into it,
like you start talking about quantum science and you smoke a little bit of weed, and you're hanging out with a bunch of, like, mystics. It's going to take you on this really weird journey.
Mhm.
Like Kelley and I've both been there. We've been on that path. Like,
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm
and
glad
we
we both got off of it too,
right, exactly. Yeah, I'm
it
glad I'm
really
not there
was
anymore.
leading. It really was leading me down a path where I felt like I was hurting other people. I
Mhm.
really do.
Yeah.
And because I was out there selling crystals to people to make them better, because I really believed it. And that's one of the big problems in that movement today, is that everybody out there who's selling crystals, they're not all out there trying to rip you off. Most of them, probably 90% of them, honestly believe that the crystal they are selling you is going to cure you. They honestly believe it because they were convinced by somebody else. And that's one of the big problems, that when you try to confront it as a fraudulent thing, the people who are doing this fraudulent thing don't think it's fraudulent. They really, really honestly, with all their hearts, believe it to be true. So it's really hard to fight against.
Yeah, that's a really good point too, because, if we're out here trying to stop people from peddling, made up cures and things like that. I mean, it matters if we're showing up at their conventions and telling everyone you're bad people, you're all a bunch of charlatans and scammers. And if that's not someone's intention, they're not going to be convinced that they need to stop doing it. They're going to think we don't know what we're talking about, right? So how how would you say, as someone that did used to sell crystals and everything like that, and really were genuine about it, what do you think is a good way to engage with someone about this issue if they really, believe in what they're doing?
Well, I still do sell rocks. So, and I do have people come into my store all the time that still believe in this. We have a sign that there's 3 copies of it at different places around the store. And it says our crystals have no healing powers whatsoever. If you are healed and you bring us back a note from a doctor telling us the crystal healed you, we will give you your money back. So that's one way we help fight it. But the other thing, I often have talks with them, and I don't want to make them mad, but I want to try to educate them, because I still want to make money. I still got to pay my bills, right?
Mhm.
So I'll usually talk about the energy. I'll approach it from that angle. When you talk about energy, what is it that you mean? Well, the crystal seems like it's you can feel this vibration from it. Well, I don't understand what you mean by that, but let's go back to the word energy. If you define energy, it's the capacity to do work, and anything that does work, we can measure the amount of work it does. So this energy that you're talking of coming from the crystal, what work is it doing and how can we measure it? right?
Mhm.
And if I approach it in that way and get them to think about an answer and act, basically I just act like I'm stupid and I'm trying to get them to explain the concept to me, a lot of them find out that they can't do it. And that to me is a big win. And it makes,
Mm.
I even had one woman got home and called me back at the store one day and asked me more questions. I was thinking about everything you said when I was driving home. And that was a big, huge win for me.
Oh
So,
man.
but because that's what I just want people to start thinking about what they're saying, and a lot of people just repeat the things that they said without thinking about it. Or we see it in religion too, right? I'm just going to repeat this thing. So, yeah, you make them try to define what it is that they're talking about. And when they realize that they can't define it, it makes them start wondering about the whole house of cards that they've built, right?
That's great. So you let them come to the conclusion. You're not beating them over the head with it.
Right, right. Like I said, I used to try to do that, and usually what I would find when here's the evidence, boom, it's in your face. What they would tend to do is dig in their heels, right? And that's
Mhm.
exactly the opposite of what I was trying to do.
Yeah, you get that
That's why
backfire effect.
I often talk about we need to stop being angry atheists for the same reason, because when we're angry atheists, we're making the theists dig in their heels even more, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Making angry theists.
Yes. Right. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great
And
point.
like when you were on Truth Wanted last week, yes, I did watch.
Thanks.
When I don't remember who you're talking to, but somebody's talking about energy, and all you asked was, well, what is energy? Like, what are you trying to describe?
Mhm.
And I remember it kind of stumped him, and then he went through like this like dibbity of what energy is, and it's a very simple question, but it forces someone to really think about what they actually mean.
Mhm.
Because you
And
throw that word around like energy, and it means like, they haven't really thought about like, what do I actually mean by that word?
Mhm. A lot of them, the first thing they'll say is, well, it's like a vibration,
Yeah.
right? And then you have to ask them, well, what do you mean by that? I mean, because I don't see it vibrating, I don't feel it vibrating. Are you sure the vibration is the right word? And then they'll start thinking, well, no, that's not the right word either, right? And it really does help to make them start thinking about what it is they're saying. I don't know how many people I've actually gotten out of womb, maybe nobody, but at least I've gotten people to start thinking about it.
Well, that seems like a pretty big win in and of itself.
Mhm.
So good for you for actually, taking the time and putting in the effort to do that. And thank you for
Yeah.
taking the time and putting in the effort to join us here this evening as well.
I had a lot of fun.
I did too.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you came. This is really interesting. I don't think we've actually had a talk about geology before on here that I
No,
recall.
I don't think in the 2 years I've been doing this, year and a half I've been doing this. I think this is the first talk about geology. So this was great.
So, rock on. We're bringing puns
Ah,
back.
I see what you
See
did
That's what I did
there.
there.
what I did there? Yeah. Stay too
Thank,
long. I'll
thank you
start
so
making
much,
bad
Gail.
puns.
And I want to say a few years ago, I went through the RFR training and I learned so much from you too. So I'm glad I could share some of my knowledge back with you. Thank you so much.
I love that. Yes, thank you. You're always welcome here. And you are gonna be able to stick around a little bit for the hangout? Yeah.
Sure, sure,
Excellent.
sure.
Okay, I'm super excited because we do have some more questions. So if anybody is going to stick around for the hangout and your question didn't get answered yet, you still have a chance. So we'll move on to
Awesome.
that here real quick, and we'll go ahead and start wrapping up and move to that. So, oh yeah, also I'll share the poll results
Oh,
real
Oh
yeah.
yeah, I'm
quick.
curious on these.
Yeah, I actually am too. Let me pull those up before I launch the ending poll. Okay, so here are the results of what we had earlier. Can y'all see that?
I can.
Okay, great.
Oh,
And I'll go
see.
ahead and read it off too for people that are listening. So the first question was, do you think crystals have any special healing energy? And 13% of people said yes. 67% said no. So that's pretty good. 20% were not sure. And Question number 2 was, have you ever believed in any type of New Age philosophy, or we now know it is correctly pronounced New Age philosophy?
I'm stealing that now.
I'm keeping that one. Yeah. And so 20% said yes, and I still do. Another 20% said yes, but not anymore. 37% said never, and 23% are not sure. So that was more of an even split on that one. And then the third question was, when or if you left the religion you were raised in, did you explore other religions or go straight to being an atheist? This one's interesting too. 27% said, yes, I explored several others. 20% said, yes, they explored one or two. 47% went straight to atheism or agnosticism, and 7% are still religious.
So that was interesting because we got 47% went through one or more religions, and 40%, 47 went straight to atheism. So we have the same number. That's pretty interesting.
That is interesting. I'm really glad you thought of those questions to ask, because those are really interesting answers. Good questions.
Cool.
And yeah. All right. Well, I'll go ahead and stop sharing that, and I will actually go ahead and launch the end poll while I've got it up here. So let me go ahead and put that up, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up and go to the Hangout. So our exit poll is the same as it always is. I'll go ahead and read the questions. Question 1 is, this program was relevant to me, and you can answer from choices 1 through 5, with 1 being not at all relevant and 5 being very much relevant. Same scale for the next question. The speaker was clear and understandable. Answer 1 means not at all, up through 5, which means very understandable. Question 3, same scale. I will attend future programs like this. 1 means definitely will not attend, all the way up through 5, which means definitely will attend. And then the fourth question, how did you find RfRx tonight? Was it through the RFR online community or Slack channel, through a meetup event, through Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, through Eventbrite, or something else? And I'll go ahead and leave that poll up.
I turned left at Iceland. Yeah. That's how I found it.
Not Albuquerque.
However you get here, just get here. That's awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us, and we will be back again next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. I'll post up the details in all of the usual places. And if you want to get more RfRx in your life, check us out on our YouTube channel, which I am going to drop the link to in the chat now. And you can also find us, as we mentioned earlier, wherever you find your podcasts, and those get updated even more frequently or more quickly. And if you have questions, comments, ideas for future shows that you'd like to see more of, you can drop us an email at rfrx@recoveringfromreligion.org. And don't forget to check out the blog and the podcast, which we mentioned earlier. And I'm dropping all those links in the chat. And Helen, would you like to tell us about the social medias?
Yes. So all of us are online. So do something positive, y'all. Go, you're on Facebook, go to our social media page at Recovering from Religion on Facebook. We also have a Facebook support group page, which so you can join that on Facebook. As long as Twitter doesn't get burned to the ground, we do have a Twitter page. We are on Twitter until Elon, implodes it. But so see what's going on the Twitter. We're on Instagram, so you can get what's going on with Recovering from Religion on Instagram, and we were also on the TikTok. So go ahead and follow us on your socials, like, subscribe, share, ring bells, whatever the socials do. Do the socials, people.
You know what to do.
Yes.
Absolutely. All right. And we're now going to introduce closing thoughts from Helen. Would you like to do our closing thoughts?
Yes, I will. So we had our fundraiser for our international division over this past weekend with Let's of the Valley, and we had some wonderful guests. We had Seth Andrews, we had Medisa Thomas, we had the guys from Open Arguments, we had people from What the Bible Says What. And we had more people that I'm kind of blanking on because it's been a long day, people, but we had some wonderful guests. Gail, our executive director, hung out in the green room, said hi to the guests, had them go into the main room, and that was wonderful. And then like our Sherry D'Souza, who is the head of our Australian organization, co-hosted with me with Kevin from Lots of the Valley, and Randolph Richardson, who is the head of Canadian Atheists. So that was a lot of fun. And it was a really great day, and Dr. Del Rey kept popping in and out, and it was great. It was 4 hours, y'all. Like, I can talk a lot, but 4 hours was a feat. Anyway, but because of that, as of right now, we're at $2,060. If you got a couple extra, like, dollars in your pocket and you want to throw it towards, so we can branch out with the international division, please consider going to our website and going to the fundraiser page. It will be up for a couple more weeks. Also, if you want to be a constant donor, and you're shopping on Amazon anyway, you want to take that money away from Mr. Bezos, you can join our Amazon Smile, and this way, every time you shop on Amazon, some of that money gets thrown towards us, and we can keep doing what we do here. Our podcasts, our support groups, keep the Slack channel running. All our agents can make all that atheist money. so every donation that you make goes directly to all the services that we have at Recovering from Religion. So if you got a couple of dollars to spare, that would be greatly appreciated. So with that, I'm going to say also, I want to say a big thank you to my team. I kind of got roped into doing fundraisers. I think I voluntold myself, and then Kevin was like, from the Lots of Valley, was like, hey, I want to do a fundraiser. And I was like, okay. And then got sucked into doing it. So, but I have the most wonderful people working behind the scenes that help me out. Whether it was like monitoring the YouTube chat, getting in contact with guests, sending out emails, getting resources, all that type of stuff. Because none of us do this alone at RfR. All of our volunteers are wonderful. So if you are listening and you're on that team, a big thank you and much love, because we all love volunteering for this organization, and any little help that I get to keep my ADHD brain on straight is a big deal. So, and everybody's now 20% cooler. So
yes.
Bonus. So yes. I also want to say, so thank you, Kelley, for being here this evening. I always love listening to you talk about rocks.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.